Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666.
I can't say I've been watching the show Sleepy Hollow very much, but as far as my perspective is concerned, the episode called Ageda really is a succinct version of everything you need to know about that show, and it exposed that show for being Gnostic. And since it's Gnostic, it is therefore anti-Judeo-Christian. In fact, the very term Christian Gnosticism makes about as much sense as vegan cannibal. Because if you were to name any Judeo-Christian doctrine, Gnosticism turned it inside out, upside down, and backwards. That's exactly what Gnosticism is. So that, for example, Gnosticism sees the spiritual realm as being pure and the physical realm as being corrupt. Therefore, whoever created the physical realm must be corrupt. Thus, the God of the Bible, who created the physical realm, is the bad guy, to put it in common parlance. And thus, the rebellious serpent, Satan, is the good guy. Because Satan came and enlightened humanity, right? God wanted to oppress us, but Satan gave us liberty, right? God didn't want us eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but Satan encouraged us to do it. So he's the good guy, God is the bad guy. That's basic Gnosticism. Well, the show Ageda, and the way they spelled it is A-K-E-D-A, but it comes from Hebrew, so it's been spelled a few different ways. I pronounce the K more like a G because I know the Hebrew pronunciation is more like Ageda. Well, Ageda refers to what's known in Jewish theology as the binding of Isaac, which is when God commanded Abraham to sacrifice, or rather, to kill his son Isaac. Now, this show was masterful in a way, because they layered it so that unless you're paying attention, unless you know these things, you're going to miss it. Here's what they did. Okay, within that show, there's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. One of them plays a part in raising what the show refers to as a god demon named Moloch. Okay, now, if you read various articles from just pop sources, they're so biblically illiterate, in keeping with our times. Our society is so biblically illiterate that they don't even seem to realize that this name comes from the Bible. Because most who even bother wondering where the name Moloch came from referred to Milton's Paradise Lost. Well, pray tell, where did Milton get the term Moloch? Well, it's from the Bible. And that kind of just shows you the level of illiteracy. Then even people writing articles about it wouldn't go as far as actually wondering or knowing or researching where it came from. It just shows you the tragic level of illiteracy under which we function as a society. Now, in the Bible, Moloch is an idol. It's a false god to whom people sacrificed children. All right? The basic premise is that they would build a metal idol of Moloch that is generally thought to have been represented as a bull with humanoid features, so a torso, hands, outstretched arms, and a bull's head. They would kindle a fire within this metal idol, and then they would place children on the white hot arms of this metal idol, along with people playing instruments very loudly and crying out very loudly to try to drown out the sounds of the crying, dying children. So there's Moloch in this show, and he's walking around Earth doing his thing, and the horseman turns against him and ends up killing Moloch, saying, so you're thinking, wow, this is wonderful. Here's an evil entity that called for child sacrifice, and he got what he deserved. He got killed, all right? So there you go. Nice. Put a little bow on it. You walk away feeling great. Makes perfect sense. But wait a minute. You see, within the story, within the show, the episode, Agada, they actually make explicit references to the story of God telling Abraham to kill Isaac. And it is within that context that when the horseman kills Moloch, to help you be a little more used to dissecting this stuff and being discerning and really hearing what's going on. So it is within that context that Moloch is killed. So in other words, when you peel back the layers, when you read between the lines, or actually when you just take it at its face value contextual way that it was portrayed, if you're paying attention, what's really happening on that show is that the Judeo-Christian God of the Bible is being condemned and murdered, period. That's what's going on. That is what's going on. Under the guise of a mean old demon god being killed. So what they're really doing is they're telling you a Gnostic story of this demon god being the God of the Bible, and this demon god deserving death. You see how they did that? They layered it. And so, first of all, that's kind of interesting given the current popo culture, because we live in a culture in which child sacrifice is perfectly acceptable. It's legal. Some would say it's ethical. And if you are against it, then you are unethical. And you're oppressive and intolerant. And you're mean and nasty. Now, of course, today we cleaned it up. We call it abortion. And we want it to take place within the offices of people who are somehow allowed to be called doctors. But it all comes down to the same thing. You are sacrificing a child for whatever reason you concoct. And I would argue that there's a fine line between reason and excuse. So first of all, that's rather odd that within a culture that approves of child sacrifice, they're condemning child sacrifice. But see, don't miss the point, which is to condemn the God of the Bible. So now, you hear it from Gnostics, you hear it from atheists, you hear it from a lot of people, how mean and bad the God of the Old Testament was to tell Abraham he should sacrifice or just merely kill for whatever reason his son Isaac. Now, they seem to miss at least three different things. One, without providing a premise upon which to condemn that, then the condemnation is meaningless. Two, did Abraham sacrifice Isaac? No. They seem to forget that. And why not? Well, because God himself, speaking through the angel of the Lord, told him not to do it, after Abraham was perfectly willing to do it. So now, what if we had an Abraham today? Wouldn't we lock him up for even attempting such a procedure? And there goes a jet plane. You're getting all kinds of ambient sounds today. Trucks, my driving, this jet plane. Yes. Okay. And with that noise pollution interlude, then you hear people saying, oh yeah? If God would have commanded me to kill my son, I would have told him no. Oh, really? Really? In keeping with the concept of the moral zeitgeist? Huh? The moral zeitgeist that shifts wherever it may go, so that what is moral today wasn't moral yesterday? What was moral yesterday is not moral today? The moral zeitgeist that turns into a poltergeist? Oh, no, 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 no. You see, one of the reasons that Abraham would have not even thought to question that, and he went ahead to do it, is because that was a time in Abraham's life when he was just getting to know God. And the morality du jour, the zeitgeist du jour, was that was the thing to do. It was not immoral. That was perfectly acceptable that you would kill your own children. It was perfectly acceptable in society. That was the thing to do. So of course Abraham said, well, yeah, of course I'll go ahead and do this. This is what's done. He had no reason to refuse to do it. So then God comes along, seeing that he's going to do it, and says to not do it. He stops him. All right? Think about how shocking that was. That here was this God who was saying, no, this will not be done for me or to me or in my name. And despite all the short... Now we have an osprey flying overhead. So, well, you're getting everything today. Planes, trains, and automobiles. And an osprey to boot. So, despite all the shortcomings that Jews, Christians, and by extension Muslims have had, one thing that Jews, Christians, and Muslims have never done is child sacrifice. At least not when faithfully following the principles laid down by the Agadah. You see, based on that story, child sacrifice has never been a part of traditional, scriptural Judaism or Christianity, and as I said, by extension, Islam. If ever Jews, Christians, or Muslims sacrificed children, it was due to a corruption and a neglecting of the Judeo-Christian scriptures. And in fact, there were Jews who did perform child sacrifices, for which they were condemned by God himself. Not only commanding that it not be done, but saying it never ever entered into his mind that they would do such a thing. So think about that. This wonderful moment in history that showed that the one true God would not accept child sacrifice has been turned into a concept from which to besmirch God. It's astonishing. But then we go a little further and say, now wait a minute. John 3:16 says that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever shall believe in him will not perish but have everlasting life. So there you go. There you go. Well, okay. First of all, let's separate a few different things here. One is humans sacrificing humans to please God, which is completely condemned by God himself. And a whole different concept is God offering his own son for humanity, so that Jesus' death was not a human sacrifice, but was a God sacrifice. Jesus was not offered to God upon an altar by humans as a sacrifice to appease God. Rather, Jesus was God coming in human flesh by his own choice, by the way. As Jesus said, no one takes my life from me. He gave it to us. It's a completely different concept. And when we understand the doctrine of the Trinity, we understand how it can be that the Father sends the Son and that the Son consents. Jesus gave his own life. It's completely different. So it's very interesting that within a popular television show, you can get so much if you even know anything about the Bible and basic theology, which our culture mostly does not. So people watch that show. They're glad that the bad guy got his comeuppance. They don't know anything about who Moloch is or the Agedah. They might, somewhere back of their memory, remember something about Abraham and Isaac. They'll likely have a bad view about that. Subconsciously, they'll be glad of their rejection of the Bible and its doctrines because of confusion such as these and manipulation such as these. As of recent years, the name Moloch has become pretty well known within certain circles due to Alex Jones referring to the huge stone owl at Bohemian Grove as Moloch, which seems rather mistaken. He likely referred to it as such because mock human sacrifices are performed to that owl during the cremation of care ritual. But traditionally it would seem that Moloch is represented as a humanoid type bull, whereas the owl is most likely with reference to Lilith. And I'll provide some information in the info section for further reading on this, including some research I did, because there's some Muslims that claim that Abraham was told to sacrifice Ishmael, his other son, and not Isaac. So I did some heavy research into this. So you can read up about that and about Lilith. And so the point is discernment, is knowing what you're being told, knowing how you're being told it, knowing how you're being manipulated. And a little knowledge goes a long way, and a lot of knowledge even further.
If we do nothing, we all die.
Our world is merging with purgatory. All bets are off.
I will lay down my soul to stop this apocalypse.
Are you willing to lay down your sons?
Do you know how many people have gotten burned claiming the end is nigh?
It's hailing blood. You know what you have to do.
Enough deceit! If the end is upon us, are we too late?